When I think of the best American pop culture has to offer, my mind often goes to G.I. Joe first, because it is a perfect example of a celebration of some quintessentially American things with influences from the other parts of the world, and it's got a kickin' toy line based around it. At least that's the public perception of G.I. Joe, a perception which usually causes the franchise to get misrepresented as a bit of overly enthusiastic America First propaganda that also steals money from hardworking parents on the side. And I really don't see it that way. I think G.I. Joe has a lot more to offer once you get past that initial veneer that was meant to make it appealing in the first place. And I figure what better time to dive into all the reasons I like G.I. Joe, the other big iconic 80s toy property from my problematic fave Hasbro, than this, the first installment of Freedom Month. Alright everybody, welcome to the first installment of Freedom Month. My name's Vac, and yes, I'm wearing a different version of my normal outfit, one that's a lot lighter, a little more patriotic, because it's 90 degrees out today, and I can only film these videos today, so maybe give your boy a like, comment down below, subscribe, ring that bell, do the YouTube algorithm engagement stuff to make shooting in this hot-ass weather under a mostly uncovered sun worth it for me. Like, I don't even know if the jacket's gonna make it all the way through this video because my ass is kind of warm right now. But hey, G.I. Joe, as I was saying during the teaser, G.I. Joe kind of has this bad rap on the internet today, at least in my circles of friends, of being this kind of 80s relic, of being this ultra almost propaganda level of celebrating the American industrial complex. And well, yes, the modern version that we know, beginning with Real American Hero, did start as that. It was very intentionally meant to be, we're going to bring back this old IP now that being into America is popular again, and we're going to ride that early 80s wave of patriotism. There's a lot more to G.I. Joe than that, and even during that era, I think G.I. Joe has this interesting and very fun ability to sort of just embrace its own sort of corniness of being overly into America and go right around the Rubicon of propaganda back into being its own kind of like earnest, fun, inspiring thing. Because, I mean, first of all, we have to acknowledge that aside from very specific points in G.I. Joe's history, it's rarely been a ultra realistic military thing. A lot of outsiders and even some hardcore fans tend to ignore and rail against this, but there's a lot of science fiction in G.I. Joe. There's a lot of, like, goofy, out there 80s cartoon concepts that even in modern versions still exist. They're almost always shooting laser guns. They got all kinds of crazy hologram and robotic technology. There was genetic engineering in one version, and oh yeah, one of the most heavily featured concepts in modern G.I. Joe is actual fucking ninjas. Those ninjas, by the way, may be my favorite part of it. Love me some Arashikage drama, and on top of that, they're probably the thing that has kept G.I. Joe relevant all these years, with just the evergreen quality of being cool-looking ninjas. You ask any rando off the street to name a few G.I. Joe characters off the top of their head, I'm pretty sure they'd say Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, and maybe even Cobra Commander before getting to any actual members of the Joe team. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's cool looking ninjas. You're going to want to look and mess with cool looking ninjas. I love me some Snake Eyes. I love me some Storm Shadow. I love me some Kamakura. A little bit of Jinx. A little bit of Nunchuck, Slash and Slice, and Dice. They're all cool fellas in my book. And while I do enjoy the military base G.I. Joe comes from, I think a lot of what gives it that broader appeal is all those other elements. That the sort of general evergreen version of G.I. Joe's fiction most people know is it's army dudes using sci-fi gear to fight crazy cartoon supervillains alongside a ninja story happening off to the side. And it's not even to say that, like, oh, the grim and gritty seriousness never exists in G.I. Joe. There have been quite a few more grounded in real kind of things that happen in military conflict type stories. It's just, you gotta take one hand with the other. You have to acknowledge that there's more to this franchise once you dig a little bit beyond the surface. And it's especially true when you take into account the fact that a lot of modern incarnations of G.I. Joe don't even really depict them as an overtly American organization. Nowadays, they're more often shown as an independent paramilitary worldwide peacekeeping force with members from military organizations all over the world. Not unlike S.H.I.E.L.D. from Marvel Comics, which is actually kind of funny when you think about the fact that the original Marvel G.I. Joe comic from the 80s that kind of kickstarted a lot of the modern lore was made off of a pitch that Larry Hama had been workshopping around the Marvel offices at the time for a comic about a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And if you want to know more about that, you can go listen to the new monthly G.I. Joe and Transformers podcast I'm doing on Modular Media with Snowcone83. Third Thursday of every month, Saturday morning panels. You're going to want to check it out. And even getting past those points that I, as a G.I. Joe fan, feel the need to bring up in order to defend the franchise from some people, there's the simple fact that, like, most incarnations of G.I. Joe are well written to the point that there's something to latch on to beyond the basic military and ninja action going on. From Dial Tone and Zorana's Forbidden Love in the Sunbow cartoon, to Scarlet's quest for the truth about her father in Renegade, to Kamakura's hero's journey of sorts in Valor vs. Venom, all the way to Destro cucking the shit out of Duke in Rise of Cobra. And even failing that, there's the fact that G.I. Joe has one of the most fascinating and well-publicized histories of a toy line out there, from the original 60s 12-inch figures being an ultra-macho response to Barbie, to the 80s O-Ring line taking influences from all over the toy aisle and the real world to create something of a pop culture watershed moment, even into the modern classified series figure line, which has kind of been the best domestic 6-inch action figure line from wave 1 all the way up until now. Seriously, the sculpt, articulation, build quality, and accessories on these things is to such a high level that I would say 99% of the releases are better than anything SH Figuarts, Masterverse, or even any of Hasbro's other 6-inch action figure lines can possibly dream of putting out. There's just so many things the line gives me as a collector that get me excited even beyond the fact that it's G.I. Joe, from all these interesting weapons and bits of military hardware to highly articulated 6-inch scale animals to blast effects and vehicles that are, well, not always the ones I'd want, but are pretty cool to see in that scale nonetheless. Not to mention the sheer variety of army builders they've managed to get to in just 3 or 4 years of the line now. I mean, before this line came out, I considered myself something of a G.I. Joe casual. I had a few figures as a kid. I watched the Sunbow and Valor vs. Venom animation every once in a while and went and saw the movies when they came out, but I wasn't super knowledgeable. When this line happened, though, it awakened a furor in me that had me researching and checking out every bit of media I'd missed. And to this day, there's very rarely a chance that they'll reveal something and I'll go, I don't need that right away. The only reason I haven't been doing reviews for the figures on this channel like I do for Transformers and other toy lines sometimes is just the simple fact of I don't know how much of my audience cares about G.I. Joe. So if you do care about G.I. Joe or this video is getting you interested in G.I. Joe, leave a comment. Let me know. Maybe I'll do some classified series figure review videos towards the end of the year. You never know. The schedule is kind of blocked up for the next 3 months, though, so we'll see. But moreover than that, I think the reason I really love G.I. Joe, when you get right down to it, is it's the closest I get to embracing the term escapism in media, because yes, G.I. Joe has this real-world base, but it takes these crazy, out-there, outlandish concepts in such stride that it's able to create this fun, interesting, cool world that doesn't feel like propaganda to me, because it doesn't feel like it's saying, this is what the world is, this is why America's great. It's saying, this is what the world could be. This is how everyone could be great, with a sort of general aesthetic of military industrial complex and some Eastern influence and some kind of goofy Buck Rogers shit thrown in there for flavor. It's saying, this is what we could be if we all came together, not in spite of our differences, but because of our differences, embracing them in order to create a force for good that goes out and helps and fights for people all around the world, on land, sea, and air. G.I. Joe is there. And I don't know about you, but I find that really inspiring and hopeful. That's the appeal to me. That's why I like G.I. Joe, is being able to live in this fantasy world where, yes, America is as cool and fun as I thought it was growing up. And you know what? So is the rest of the world too. Because America is a melting pot, because the whole world is a melting pot, and we all have to come together to be at our best. So yeah, that's it. That's the G.I. Joe video, everybody. That's why I like G.I. Joe as a franchise. Hopefully you guys understand and get it now, or at least hopefully you found this interesting or entertaining or coherent in some way. I don't really know if you will, because I didn't have a clear plan for this one, just like some points I knew I wanted to hit, and I came out here and started spitballing under this really oppressive sun. So yeah, I'm going to throw this together, try and get it up in time for the 4th of July, and in the event I do, I'm going to spend the rest of the day celebrating by grilling up some burgers, drinking some beer, opening all the classified series figures that I currently have on my stupidly big to open pile, and watching the greatest 3 minutes of animation ever made by man, that being the intro to the 1980s animated G.I. Joe movie on loop, because that's how I celebrate America. Yeah, even if I don't, it's not a big deal, because I'm not actually in the military or anything. I'm my own boss on this channel, but I try to get stuff out as fast as I can for y'all, and hopefully you like it, hopefully you comment it, hopefully you subscribe it. I don't know where this is going. I'm the Vacuuminator, reminding you that you never fail until you stop trying, which is why I'm never going to stop trying to get you guys to understand that things you might think are corny and stupid and dated are actually kind of cool, because knowing is half the battle. So you're going to want to know that, just like you're going to want to know that the other half of the battle, especially when it comes to being a G.I. Joe fan, is crippling credit card debt. So maybe help a brother out by pledging to my Patreon if you haven't already, because just $1, get your name in the end screen, get you access to videos a little early, get you a monthly behind-the-scenes podcast, and if you go a little higher than that, go to $5. I'll even shout you out at the end of a video and read off a question from you on that behind-the-scenes podcast. So I think it's worth doing, and you know, your man is trying to get to $100 by the end of the year, so I can really use all the support you can spare. But yeah, that's enough shilling for now. I'm going to get out of here. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Until next time.